Hey guys, it's JC with Wax Poetic Pro Wrestling, and I'm with you here on a Thursday night, and I'm here to actually react to the WrestleMania 40 kickoff press event that they had in Las Vegas this evening. Um, this is something that obviously, after all the confusion of the last week or so, since Cody Rhodes kind of stumbled and stepped aside for the returning Rock, which caused a groundswell of support from the fans around the world, mostly on the internet. But there was a lot of trending slogans, most notably "We Want Cody." Um, so I think what we're seeing here is, just going into the press conference, is kind of this being framed as a repeat of events that have happened in the past to other superstars. Um, People like Daniel Bryan, people like CM Punk, going back 10 years, at the least 10 years on all this stuff. But the one main difference here is that Cody is actually the rightful person as far as winning the Royal Rumble. He controls his own destiny. So if he is indeed stepping aside for The Rock, then obviously it will be his choice to do so. So that was always the thing in the back, I think, of people's minds in this situation. And obviously, what they did, whether the crowd was gauged after The Rock appeared last Friday and they made some adjustments there, or were they anticipating that The Rock would come out, and the reaction to it, although not in the arena last Friday, but the reaction and the aftermath would have been so negative. Um, I think they've been saying now for a couple of days, alluding to the fact that, like, oh yeah, this is all, been part of the plan. We planned this all along. But I have a kind of a hard time believing that that is the case in this situation, that they actually knew that the fans were going to react that way. But what I do think is they assess the situation, and, The Rock being on the board now, being a vital part of WWE going forward, I think that he understood the responsibility that he had, not really taking Vince McMahon's place, but I feel like him, along with Triple H, I think that they both kind of feel a certain custodianship of the business at this level. I think it's funny because, you watch The Rock today going into this press event. He appeared on the Pat McAfee show, and he said, well, in addition to calling all the Cody fans, the hardcore Cody fans, crybabies, and, eating fucking chicken McNuggets or whatever, shoving them up their asses, whatever. Yeah, okay, it's funny. But, aside from all that, the one thing that I did notice more than anything, actually, was, maybe this is weird that I'm zoning in on this, but he never once said the words sports entertainment during that whole segment on Pat McAfee. He kept referring to it as pro wrestling. Now, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that, Vince McMahon is no longer around. And I feel as if people like The Rock and people like Triple H, they love pro wrestling. They're not Vince McMahon. They're not Kevin Dunn. They don't think that pro wrestling is an ugly word. I know Cody Rhodes doesn't think it is. I know that The Rock apparently doesn't think it is either because he keeps saying it. And I'm pretty sure Triple H feels the same way. I'm not saying they're never going to refer to it as sports entertainment again, but the whole like directive that WWE had for so many years to not utter the bad pro wrestling words, or that phrase of pro wrestling, or refer to it as pro wrestling. I think that those days are in the past. I think that everybody, young, old, big, tall, or small, we all understand that pro wrestling and sports entertainment are one and the same, or they're synonymous, or they're interweaved. They have a symbiotic relationship, a yin and yang. Where like AEW is very strong to the pro wrestling, and WWE is very strong to the sports entertainment. But yet there are elements of the non-dominant traits in both. So they both have elements of both at all times. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. But he referred to the Cody fans today as crybabies. So you kind of like could smell that, somewhat of a heel turn might be taking place here. Because like I said, The Rock, Triple H, Paul Heyman, or Brian Gerwitz, whoever, Cody, Seth, Roman, CM Punk, all these guys that are circling around this creative and circling around the orbit of making this thing happen. They all care about the business. So I think that's one of the run-throughs of this whole thing is, as much as The Rock wanted to be in the main event with his cousin, Roman Reigns, he also understands that he has an obligation to the business going forward, especially now that he's on the board of directors here. So basically this event started, and you had Michael Cole flagged by CM Punk, Pat McAfee, and Big E. So this was a great panel to start with, just putting Pat McAfee and CM Punk on the same panel. It's going to be pretty explosive. So that was nice. Obviously, Punk delivered some really nice lines, as he always does. So then we get to the festivities, and Triple H comes out and says he's going to take us on a wild ride, and we're not going to know what hit us over the next couple of months. So obviously when the head booker and CCO says that, it does generally mean that's what's going to happen. We're going to be in for a wild ride here. And I pretty much thought, like, well, even putting on this event, even the idea of this event just existing, just to have, like, it's really never been done before, where you had an event that was like created angles, for WrestleMania. To start, usually people, they just do the Royal Rumble and then they just kind of go along to the road to WrestleMania or whatever. But, I don't think they've ever done like a kickoff show in a separate city, Super Bowl weekend in the same city as the Super Bowl as well. So all the press were there. That was actually a stroke of brilliance that they put this event on, at the Super Bowl, or, the same city at the same week, the Thursday before the weekend of the Super Bowl in the same city of the Super Bowl. So all eyes were glued on Las Vegas today. Like I said, Triple H said he's going to take us on a wild ride. We had Pat McAfee and Michael Cole up on stage. Then you obviously had Bianca Belair came out and plugged, loving WWE. And the fact that she's going to be in the multiple women inside of Elimination Chamber. And I guess this is going to be a two-branded chamber, because Becky Lynch from Raw had already qualified, and now they're saying that Bianca will be in a qualifying match this Friday for Elimination Chamber. So we are going to get a lot of names in this chamber. Obviously, Bianca will most likely win her qualifying match, you would think, to get into the chamber. So it would be her and Becky. Who knows who else we're going to have in there. But, you know, Becky then, or Rhea Ripley then came out and said, you know, whoever wins the Elimination Chamber is going to be wasting their time. And she will take care of Nia Jax in Australia, her home country. But rest assured, whoever wins the chamber, you're not going to stand a chance against Mommy, basically, is what she said. And then, of course, the man, Becky Lynch, came out and she said she's going to win the chamber. And Mommy, who likes to always be on top, she will know what it feels like to be a bottom, which was, that was a sizzler. That was a spicy, spicy line right there. Like, that was good stuff right there, man. I was like, whoa. Okay, and then they got in each other's face, obviously. Adam Pearce comes out, gets between them. Of course, McAfee's over there. Come on, Pearce, do your job. Do your job. I don't know why you're saying that, but it was kind of funny, I guess. Whatever. So then we had Seth Rollins came out, and he basically said, well, he said he's going to introduce Cody Rhodes, and Cody can make his decision finally. So we wait for Cody, and we don't get Cody. We actually get Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns comes in and does his pomp and circumstance with Paul Heyman in tow. And then he basically says that he will be making the decision since Cody fumbled the ball and deferred to The Rock. That means he, the tribal chief, will now make the decision on who he will face at WrestleMania. And he chooses The Rock. So the crowd was a little confused by that. There was a small contingent of people that were cheering for The Rock for most of the night. And then I would say it was probably around 65-35-ish, pro Cody. Probably, maybe, like I said, 35% pro Rock in there. So it was close to, it was teetering, as far as the who was cheering for who and whatnot. But it was definitely a bit of a mixed bag here. So he chose The Rock, and then The Rock came out and said, who wants to see The Rock beat, or who thinks that The Rock can beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania? And the crowd was kind of mixed on that question. It was very interesting here in this whole part, because The Rock actually really did a really good job as listening to the crowd and absorbing their energy and getting a feel of, like, where this thing maybe should go, even though they probably knew it. They obviously knew ahead of time, but he looked almost thoughtful, like, what does this crowd think? So then he says, I think he asked another question. I forget the other question, but then he said, I understand how everybody feels, and let me show you something. So he pulls up this big graphic behind them, which was the Samoan Dynasty tree, where he shows that The Rock's grandfather and Roman Reigns' grandfather were, right on top of the family tree. They were the ones that had the pact and, kind of created the whole Samoan Dynasty. So The Rock basically said, well, I'm going to show you this, and whether you love it or you hate it, you're going to respect it. And he showed it to us, and then the crowd was still kind of mixed about it, you know what I mean? And then The Rock basically said again, well, like I said, you can like it, you can hate it. This is going to be the match. And, they're about to square off. And then Cody comes out and he's like, hold it. I just can't let this go on, any longer. He comes out and he says his piece, obviously, in this situation. And basically said they got into the whole situation of saying that The Rock and Roman's grandfathers would be ashamed of Roman Reigns and the way he acts. He would be absolutely ashamed. And Roman basically said, well, your father's just irrelevant. So, and that really got Cody going, obviously. He got his goad. And at that point he's like, okay, well, guess what? I won WrestleMania. I'm still choosing, and I choose you for WrestleMania 40. So there it is. We got Cody. And like I said, I'm not really sure where they're going to go with this. But then, of course, The Rock said, got in Cody's face and said, are you talking about my family? Are you, and basically this led to The Rock slapping Cody Rhodes across the face and say, you'll never talk, talk about my family, and you keep my family's name out of your mouth. And, then Seth got up and, got up in Roman's face, and The Rock was sitting there, and they were jaw-jacking, and you had Adam Pearce, and you had Nick Aldis, and you had Triple H, and you had Paul Heyman all on stage. So there was a lot of moving parts in this segment, and the only thing that I could ever really compare this to, because it was almost an ensemble piece, a piece of cinema, or it just, if the only thing I can compare it to in pro wrestling history would have been the main angle for the WrestleMania 3 build, which would have been a Piper's Pit hosted by Roddy Piper, with basically from the previous week, Jesse Ventura promised to produce Andre the Giant and Bobby Heenan, or Andre the Giant, I should say, and Roddy Piper agreed to produce Hulk Hogan because Ventura claimed that there was an issue there. So then the next week you had Roddy Piper invite out Hulk Hogan, and then you had Jesse Ventura come out with Andre, who was flagged by Bobby the Brain Heenan. So up until this point, we had not known that Andre was going to be a heel. We had no inkling of that until he showed up with Bobby the Brain Heenan as apparently his new manager advisor. So then we got that. So what I'm trying to say here is that you had three of your best angle makers and talkers with your two biggest stars, and they were all kind of working as a well-oiled machine to make this thing come off as dramatic and as best they possibly could. You had Hogan, you had Andre, you had Piper, you had Heenan, you had Ventura, all on the stage at the same time. Just like we had here. You had Roman Reigns, you had Cody Rhodes, you had Seth freaking Rollins, you had The Rock, you had Triple H, you had Paul Heyman, you had Adam Pearce, and you also had Nick Aldis. And of course, over to the side, you still had Michael Cole and Pat McAfee and Big E and CM Punk back on the analyst desk. So they all played a part in this whole thing. So they, like I said, after Cody got slapped, everybody got up in each other's faces, and Triple H and the general managers were kind of getting everybody out of the area, mostly getting Cody and Seth away from The Rock and Roman, because at this point it looks like we are aligning. They're somehow aligning, even though they were going to be facing each other. There was an alignment, and obviously, what it seems like what we're heading here is, I don't know if this is a long-term angle, maybe just until after WrestleMania or something like that, but the bloodline with The Rock as the head of the table. I mean, you have Roman at the head of the table, I guess, but then there's also the other end of the other head of the table, because it's there's two heads of the table on each side. I mean, that's kind of maybe the way they could explain, well, there can be two heads of the table. The Rock is the head of the table in the ring, or Roman's the head of the table in the ring, but the head of the table in the boardroom is The Rock, and they work together in unison as a unit, the bloodline. And I'm not saying that The Rock can't turn on Roman down the road. Maybe at WrestleMania, maybe that's what happens. Maybe he becomes the guest referee, the guest enforcer, or something like that. And then, of course, there was at the end of this thing, there was some funny stuff said. CM Punk said a lot of funny stuff. He said, "Well, who wants to see Cody punch The Rock in the face? I do." Of course, the crowd was all into it. And then there was a bit of an Easter egg reference and a little bit of a meta reference by Punk, maybe alluding to his ECW days, kind of saying, "This is pro wrestling. You solve issues. We're pro wrestling, aren't we? We're men. We just solve the issue." He's like, Cody's got to get madder. He's got to punch somebody. Seth too. He says, "Well, there's too many there's too many man buttons backstage here and not enough action," or something along those lines. Great. So Punk even added something here, at the end. He threw in a couple memorable lines as well from the commentary desk, the analyst desk, which is exactly what they should be doing with CM Punk when he's injured. The WWE has a long history of giving of really good wrestler commentators, whether it's Jesse Ventura or Roddy Piper or Randy Savage or Jerry Lawler or who have you. There have been a lot of great color analysts, color commentators that are pro wrestlers. So, I mean, CM Punk, this is something perfect for him to do, to stay in the spotlight, to stay in people's minds, in the mix. I think he even might have even said that, just, stay in the mix and contribute. And that's the thing, is, like I said, there was so many people that contributed here. Like I said, you run down the list of contributors. Cody was phenomenal. The Roman was phenomenal. The Rock was phenomenal. Seth was great. Punk was great. McAfee, Michael Cole, Paul Heyman, even Adam Pearce, even Nick Aldis, just standing over by the stage. It just made it all come off perfect. And that's the one thing, a lot of people say, I mean, personally, I prefer AEW. I prefer a more straight ahead pro wrestling style. But when WWE, with the money behind it, with the years, with the structure behind it, when they really put their mind to it and they want to tell you a great story, especially an angle, angles are what they really specialize in. And you had simply put, some of the greatest minds in the history of this business all kind of like orbiting around this angle. I mean, it should be great. And it was great. So, yeah. And then, of course, the thing backstage afterwards where, they were interviewing Triple H and asking him what's going on. And then The Rock comes by and then Roman comes by and they tell Triple H he's got to handle it or something along those lines, and Triple H is like, you're out of line, you were out of line. He's like, and they're just like, fix it, and then they walk away, so they're obviously starting something there with Triple H being a babyface in the situation, like he's the good guy, he's the one who's protecting the interest of the company and the fans and pro wrestling in general. Like I said, a lot of this is behind the scenes and in front of the camera. A lot of it is about the custodianship of the biggest company in pro wrestling, WWE, not sports entertainment, pro wrestling. They feel an obligation, and I feel as if right now there's still a lot of moving parts here. A lot of things can happen. There's talks of a tag match. I don't really know if there's going to be a tag match, especially with Seth, because Seth is coming off that surgery, unless, he's going to come back early from the surgery. I mean, I guess he could. I don't know if that's such a great idea, but, I guess it could happen. And then, of course, we have another chamber match in Australia at Elimination Chamber to decide who will be wrestling Seth. But like I said, we got 2 months until WrestleMania, so we might, who knows, we might get a tag match here. There's a lot of things, moving parts here. Like, what are they going to do with Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso? Are they going to fight each other? How's Solo Sikoa involved in this? Is Tama Tonga coming into WWE? Will he be a factor in this whole situation? Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts here. The one thing we do know, the only solid thing that we do know is, obviously, of course, Bayley will be challenging Io Sky. And then the other thing we know is that Cody will be facing Roman Reigns. Will it get turned into a triple threat? Will he defend the title on both nights? Are they, obviously The Rock is in for the long haul here because he's on the board. So maybe he's just a special referee here, or he's, part of the authority figure in the lead up to this whole thing. It's the bloodline with The Rock versus Cody and whoever else can help him, whether that's Triple H or Seth Rollins or whoever, And then, things like, how does the Judgment Day, tie into this? How does Drew McIntyre tie into this whole situation? There's so many, Sami Zayn, there are just so many ways to go down. But like I said, a masterful angle. They answered questions, but they left us with more questions, and I think as fans, we can actually get behind this. Because, okay, Cody is the main protagonist here. He is the number one babyface. I think that's what the fans wanted ultimately, was for Cody to get his shot again and be the number one babyface. And that's exactly what we're getting. So, but how all the other chess pieces that they've moved into position, how they all work in this whole situation, is going to be the magic, and it's going to be the adventure and the ride that we take over the next 2 months. And who knows, maybe the story extends beyond that, at least for, the Rock's involvement in the story. It might extend beyond that. But either way, like I said, good press conference. Best angle I've ever seen for pre-WrestleMania. Or I'm going to say it's right on the level with the Hogan, Andre on Piper's Pit angle that they did. So, like I said, it's this one and that one are probably the 2 best ones I've ever seen. So, like I said, this was masterful work. by all the talented minds involved in telling, letting this great story unfold for us here over the next 2 months on the lead up to the 40th anniversary of the Showcase of the Immortals, WrestleMania 40. Okay, I'll be contributing with another video here soon, guys. Look for that over the weekend. Like, comment, and subscribe to Wax Poetic Pro Wrestling. I'm JC, and as Ian Riccaboni would say, happy wrestling, y'all.